Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask an Assistant, the podcast for executive assistants and the people that love us. I'm your host, Jess Lindgren. Let's get to work. This week's question comes from Esteemed Colleague Brit, who wrote in via askanassistant.com with the following question. Brit says, Jess, my exec frequently asks me to run errands, which usually involves me buying things, sometimes small things, sometimes more expensive things. I don't have a company credit card and my executive won't send me with their card, so I always buy things, submit receipts, and get reimbursed. The problem is that accounting only processes expenses once a month, so sometimes I've spent hundreds of dollars before getting my money back. How do I get them to give me the money I need to do the job that they're asking me to do without putting my personal finances in jeopardy? Hey, Britt, this might be a first, but I don't love this question. I am so very sorry to hear that you're being put in this position, and I hope that the advice that I sent via email was helpful. Thank you so much for also letting me record an episode on this, because I'm pretty sure it will help entirely too many other people who are in a similar position. Purchasing power can be such a tricky riddle to solve, but it really doesn't need to be. Your company, and you know I don't love the word should, but your company should have a policy and a procedure in place when it comes to expenses. Those two things are distinct. A policy regarding the who, what, when, where, why of it all, and the procedure, meaning the steps that you follow to make purchases and potentially get reimbursed for them. If they don't, help the company develop it with the assistance of the financial and or legal professionals that are in your orbit. In my current role, for example, I do have a company issued card. It's in my name. It's a physical card that I can take with me anywhere that I go. Super handy, as I do. For a while there, it was only a couple trips a year. Now it's ramping up to like 6+ trips a year. It's very helpful to have purchasing power, to, get a meal at an airport, to check a bag, to whatever it is that comes up in the course of completing your work assignment. Having purchasing power is extremely important. I make any work-related purchases on the card. I keep track of receipts, and I get approval from my executive anytime I make a purchase over, let's say, I don't know, about $500, or like if it's like an unusual place that I wouldn't normally buy something from, just in case a fraud alert comes through, just in case the purchase, he gets a text about it or something, because he's the main company card holder. We're a small company of 2, so like this exact scenario doesn't work for everyone, but the bones of it absolutely do, where you spend exclusively on your company issued card, whether it's in your name or the name of your executive, or maybe your company accountant. Keep receipts, submit them as appropriate into whatever your expense management software might be, and get permission for purchases that are over a certain dollar amount. I have worked in companies where that dollar amount is like $25. I've worked in companies where you get permission for everything, whether it's 25 cents or $2,500. I've worked in positions where it's just kind of, hey, I'll let you know if I have a question, buy whatever it is that you need in the moment, and I'll let you know if I have any questions afterward. I like a bit of structure myself, and even in the roles where I've had carte blanche to buy whatever, $500 is a pretty good guideline for me personally. Like, hey, this feels $500 to me feels like a lot of money. So that has always been something like, hey, you cool? This is $500. This is $1,000. This is $2,000. This is $10,000. You okay with this? I just like to cover my butt. In my previous full-time executive assistant role, the one that I had prior to the company I'm in now, I did not have a company issued credit card, but I always had access to both of my executives' personal credit cards and a company card. On the rare occasion that I was asked to buy something without access to the appropriate funds, whether it was for the company or for one of my executives personally, one of two things happened. Thing one, I was reimbursed in cash by the executive in person. Like if I was out and about, or like one time I was asked to buy a bottle of Dom Perignon, It wasn't something that the liquor store would accept payment for over the phone. I needed to show up in person with my identification, so I couldn't go with a credit card that had someone else's name on it. I was able to make the judgment call in the moment of like, yes, this is a thing because I know my executive will reimburse me the moment I get back to the office. So either cash in hand when I exchange the item by my executive if it was a personal purchase, or on my next paycheck if it was a company purchase, and only if I was comfortable making the purchase, which definitely varied depending on the amount, the situation. Like there was a different situation where the company credit card was physically lost. Like the person who had it dropped it, lost it, couldn't find it. We had to have it canceled. We had to have a new one reissued. Purchasing did come up during the week or so that it took to get a new card. And I was doing purchasing on my personal card, but was always free to say no, which was great. Just like, hey, this doesn't work for me. Because on the flip side of that, if I wasn't making the purchase using my personal funds, the purchase waited until I had access to the appropriate funds, like until, my executive, it might be inconvenient, but if I didn't want to buy the bottle of Dom, my executive would need to go do it themselves. If I didn't want to, there were definitely a couple purchases during that week period that did wait until the new card came in. Like I'm not booking a flight on my personal card. I'm not putting whatever, big thing. Like, sure, I can run across the street to Whole Foods and pick up a case of bottled water, but like I'm not putting several $100s worth of expense on my personal card. So always free to say no and always able to wait until purchasing power became available. I really, Brit, cannot stress enough just how important it is for you to not be making work purchases with your personal funds. Actually, let me caveat that. If you have an ironclad policy outlining the who, what, when, where, why, and how that you will make purchases, and the who, what, when, where, why, and how the company will reimburse you for said purchases. Like if you have the best, most clear, easy to understand policy procedure, you agree with it, you understand it, you sign off on it, go ahead. Make the work purchases with your personal funds if you're comfortable with floating the expense. Like rack up those reward points, the airline miles, the cash back, whatever, depending on what kind of card you have. Make sure it's in writing. Make sure that you read it. Make sure that you agree to it and that you have a countersigned copy in hand. Because like the number of horror stories I've heard from people with just like a handshake agreement when it comes to expenses, who then either have to fight to get reimbursed after being unexpectedly let go, or just have to eat the expenses because there wasn't enough evidence to take them to court, small claims or otherwise. Like make sure you have an excellent policy and procedure written out. We're going to take a step back to Ask an Assistant episode number, while I look this up, Ask an Assistant episode number 21 about employee handbooks. It will be linked in the show notes. You can also do a light Google to find Ask an Assistant episode 21 or Ask an Assistant employee handbooks. Employee handbooks usually outline expense procedures, like among other things. Obviously, the employee handbook is not just about expenses, but usually the expense policy and procedure will be in the company employee handbook and will tell you whether you're using company or personal funds to incur them. Read that handbook, understand it, agree with it, sign it, get it countersigned, keep a copy handy. If expenses aren't covered in your employee handbook for whatever reason, be sure to request and obtain a copy of the company's specific expense policy. Same thing, you need to read it, you need to understand it, you need to agree with it, you need to sign it, you need to get it countersigned and keep a copy handy. Like understanding and agreeing with the policy is key. Make sure that you read it before you sign it And if there is something in there that you don't understand, or maybe something you don't agree with, ask them to explain it and ask them what your options might be. If the company has a policy of employees putting expenses on personal credit cards and you're not comfortable with it, ask them what the options are. What options exist? Like maybe company issued cards are available, but you have to ask. Maybe as, not to play favorites or like pull rank or whatever, but like maybe as part of the C-suite, because you are, as an executive assistant, part of the C-suite, there might be a different, not necessarily a different set of rules, but like there might be different access for you that aren't covered in the greater employee handbook or expense policy. Maybe you can get access to a company issued card, whether it's in your executive's name, the accountant's name, the whatever, for bigger purchases, and you might have access to petty cash for smaller incidental purchases. Bottom line here is you never know until you ask. Putting work expenses on your personal card is a very slippery slope. And seriously, this is not exaggeration. It is a loan to the company. Any financial and legal professionals that are worth their salt would strongly, I hope they would, working with a lot of legal and financial professionals myself across multiple states on any given day. I hope that good legal and financial professionals, especially in 2025, would really strongly advise against the practice of employees putting company expenses on their personal cards without strong policies and a quick reimbursement turnaround in place. It can be argued that you, the employee making regular purchases for them, your employer, it can be argued that you doing that on a regular basis is an interest-free loan from you, the employee, to them, the employer. Like, it's just, I'm also like, I am full-time employed by a company of 2. I have my own company of 1. My accountant won't even let me use a credit card that is in my name, like my personal name, for business purchases. Like, I had to go get a business credit card in the name of my company for this exact reason. My books would have been a total nightmare scenario of loans and repayments every time I bought coffee over the last 10 years. Like, it's just not worth it. Finally, I also need you to understand that no is a complete sentence. True or not, you absolutely do not owe your employer a sob story about how picking up pens for the office is going to prevent you from buying groceries this weekend. That in and of itself is a different conversation for a different day. Like, if floating the company even a tiny expense will put you in financial jeopardy, the company needs to be paying you more. Like, that's a bigger story for a different day. But it can be very tempting to try and justify why you can't do something that you're not comfortable with. It's none of their business what your personal finances are or are not. It is, however, their business to provide appropriate purchasing power if they're asking you to buy things. You just need to remember, this is a practice like many things in life. You need to remember that no is a complete sentence. As an executive assistant, which I am, which you are, Brit, I would personally press for a company card in my name, access to petty cash, or someone with purchasing power to complete the transaction for whatever items they are, and you can be the person to project manage it through to fruition. Like, there's so many delivery options these days, whether it's food delivery, item delivery, service providers, TaskRabbits, like all of these things. You can set up purchasing power through your accountant. You can set up like vendor accounts instead of you being the person with a credit card in your name. Like, there are just so many options. And yeah, like, really try to keep your personal funds out of it in any way, shape, or form, unless you've got that ironclad contract in place that says, any expenses incurred will be reimbursed within 2 business days or something. Like, Yikes. What an absolute nightmare and a situation that I do not envy you. So Brit, I really hope that was helpful to anyone out there listening. Please make sure that you have a firm grip on how purchasing power works at your place of employment. We are going to talk about reading and understanding and agreeing with anything you sign in a future episode. So stay tuned about that. And yeah, that's all for this week. I hope you are all happy, healthy, hydrated as much as you can be. As always, leave your comments, questions, thoughts, and concerns for me at askanassistant.com. And until next week, take care.